Well, we've actually made it to the final session. Everyone still awake and alert out there? There we go. I like it. All right. I always find the last session is the most vibrant because anyone who's left is like a real gamer, just like really excited to be here. So thank you all for being here for our final sessions. This is an incredible duo of speakers to finish us off. And I'm going to start with the one and only Hunter Hoffman, who really needs no introduction and has been introduced several times already. Even in his absence, we were introducing you yesterday, making sure everyone knew about your incredible work, going back decades now, particularly for Snow World. He is the director of the Virtual Reality Research Center. I think that's correct. That's the right term. At the University of Washington, has been at UW for many, many years, doing extraordinary research. That has been the basis for why many of us are literally in this room, is because of folks like Hunter Hoffman and others who I highlighted yesterday. So without further ado, I'm really excited to have him join us on stage here at VMed to talk about his work and whatever the heck you want to teach us this time around. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I see what you mean about that. Hey, let's see. There's one button you're not supposed to push or it goes blank. Here's my friends I've been collaborating with. That picture of Sam Shar is from high school. He's actually now emeritus. Thanks to Brennan for putting this all together, and very impressed with the surge in VR that you're helping accelerate. Here's a talk.
I couldn't see to unbuckle my seatbelt or open the door. I believe my guardian angel just took me out of the truck.
First Lieutenant Samuel Brown survived an attack on his Humvee in southern Afghanistan, but he would then have to endure rounds of surgery, skin grafts, and painful skin stretching.
This is a battle that's going to take years to get back to being how it was prior to this.
But while Brown's body fights that battle, virtual reality technology lets his brain enjoy hurling snowballs to the music of Paul Simon. University of Washington researchers Hunter Hoffman and David Patterson designed the virtual reality game Snow World to occupy burn patients' minds during painful wound cleaning or physical therapy.
Snow World's the opposite of fire. Snowy, cold. It's supposed to cancel out and help distract them from remembering their original injury.
Their previous research showed that not only do patients report less pain in Snow World, MRI scans show it reduces the brain's pain signals. Brown's doctors see real improvement.
What we saw was marked improvement in the range of motion that we were able to achieve, and most importantly, an increased level of comfort.
As published in the Journal of Cybertherapy and Rehabilitation, the soldiers even report a fun quotient.
I spent some time growing up out in Colorado skiing during the winters and stuff, so if anything, it sort of brings back some of those memories.
A cool escape for a war hero putting the pieces back together. I'm Brad Close.
So one positive note about Sam Brown is he fell in love with his nurse. They got married and they now have 2 children. So he's, and my girlfriend wanted to go out with him instead of me. So this is the first paper published on VR analgesia in 2000, and the patient's wearing an 8-pound helmet. It had a lot of electronics in the front, so they put a lead brick in the back to balance it out. And this was a $90,000 VR system that really took a huge amount of, it took several hours to set up because it was, a supercomputer basically. More recently, I helped design a water-friendly VR system with a robot-like arm goggle holder to hold the eyepieces near the patient's eyes. And this is battery-powered, so we could just roll it into the wound care room and take it with us when we left. This was at Shriners Hospitals for Children Burn Wound Care. And here's some data from one of the 2 studies that we did at Shriners that treats unusually large burns of pediatric children, a lot of whom come from south of the border. So low-income countries with the average burn size was 40%, 40. And at Harborview Burn Center, we're in Seattle at the University of Washington, the average burn size is, even though it's a regional burn center, the average burn size is only 15 to 20%. So these 40% burns are unusually large, very challenging. Recently, I helped a computer science student from Saudi Arabia created Animal Rescue World. So there's bubbles with animals floating, and this is for children under 6. So you also have, Montreal's also got data showing VR works for kids under 6, which is a really important development because most scald burns, even including all the age range, most scald burns are patients 5 and under. Because what you have is kids that their motility precedes their cautiousness. So they can move around, but they're unaware of all the dangers. So they reach up and grab a pot of spaghetti and pull it on themselves. This is one of the patients, and this is sort of what do you call it, a foreshadowing of later in my talk. So I just made the connection that we've been using VR to reduce pain during movement therapy, which is really important for chronic pain, but we were doing it with acute pain for children. This is another kid from Shriners. And this kid left for a break, and when he came back, he said something in Spanish. And I asked the nurse, what did he say? And the nurse said, watch out, penguins. So you know, it's actually pretty potentially important therapeutically because memory for wound care can become PTSD hotspots. So if they're remembering Snow World instead of the wound care, that could actually be real helpful. Here, I once was standing in line at Safeway to buy a bottle of wine. Somebody was taking a long time to cash in some coupons. I leafed through a magazine and was shocked to see one of my colleagues was in this magazine. So Stephen Hawkins, Charles Darwin, Marsha Linehan. So she was in there. She designed dialectical behavioral therapy. It's a mixture of cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness. And she did this back in the 70s and has created this incredibly effective technique that's widely used, and especially for suicidal women like borderline personality disorder, but it's been expanded to be used for depression and other, it's very valuable. So this on the left is an actual cover for Newsweek about mindfulness. And here is something Marsha Linehan and I put together with Navarro. So you float down a mindful river and you hear audio from Marsha Linehan training you how to practice mindfulness. Focus your attention on this, what you see, the colors of the clouds, and if your mind wanders, bring it back. So one of the tragedies of mindfulness is the people who could benefit the most often drop out because they have attentional deficits, depression, chronic pain, all reduce your attentional resources, what makes it harder to concentrate. The nice thing about virtual reality is it blocks your view and it already draws you in. And really the essence of virtual reality is the be here now, or I mean, the essence of mindfulness is be here in the moment. And it's just a little cheating really to say, be here in the virtual world now. And it's a lot easier to be in the virtual world now than it is in the real world. So the challenge is, you know, you keep one worrying about something that happened or worrying about something that's going to happen. But when you're in VR, it's easier to just be in the VR. The data we collected was amazing. We published the first data to use VR clinically that I'm aware of, 2016, Marsha Linehan and I. And with one of her borderline personality patients, Marie V. Navarro, found, a lot of negative emotions during no VR, shown in blue, and during VR, after 10 minutes of mindfulness in VR, her negative emotions dropped to the floor, and her joy went to the ceiling. So that we've since used it with a large burn patient at Shriners and a spinal injury patient that was just kind of grappling with the fact that they were going to be paralyzed the rest of their life. So trying to intervene early. Here is something new. This is my mother's closet. Needs a little cleaning. And you'll see how easy it is to clean that up. This is the new
mindfulness exercise. For you to practice attending to what you see. The idea is to pay really close attention to everything you see, everything you hear, as you sit quietly.
Okay, and I was going to have a lightning strike, and it's not nice to fool Mother Nature, but I'd skip that. Mixed reality. So that what you just saw is what most people think of when you think of mixed reality. If I had you raise your hands, most of you would say AR, AR, AR. And today, I'm emphasizing another type of mixed reality that's much lesser used, that has a lot of potential. That's using real objects to enhance the realism of virtual objects in immersive virtual reality. And this goes way back to 1996, and using it to enhance the effectiveness of clinical treatment for spider phobia using exposure therapy. Here's a quick video.
Avoiding even the slightest glimpse of a spider had become a full-time obsession.
Now that you've achieved some level of desensitization,
Yeah.
we'll move to the next stage.
Okay.
So we'll just go back.
Is the spider going to get worse? Is that it?
No, it's... Can you see okay?
Yes, I see fine. Now, at this point, you know more about what's going on than I do, locked away as I am in my virtual...
Touch the spider.
No,
with
sure.
an open hand.
Open hand. Ah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Ah. Hey, what? Not only get away and fly into total uncontrollable panic.
This is so cool. Can you feel the little claws at the end of her feet? They're like a cat foot.
So one secret is her clinical psychologist, Al Carlin, he was like, I don't want her to hold a live tarantula. And I said, this is Alan, all the Scientific American, it's showbiz. So we ended up winning, but it was with some reluctance. But it turned out really well. And that's a pretty dramatic example. The woman started, I don't know if you noticed, but she started off duct taping her door shut, and after, I think it was 10 one-hour VR sessions with gradually increasing realism, culminate in the last one, and so Al Carlin would say to me, oh, Hunter, we'll have a new virtual world for you next week. And I'm like, I've run out of ideas. We had one crawl up her leg, we had one in the cupboard, and then I'm like, okay, I have one more idea, which was the tactile feedback. So and that ended up, she said, she was the one who said that tactile augmentation. After that, I'm not afraid of any real spider because it pales in comparison to the virtual spider. So Athu from Spain and I and Al Carlin did some follow-on studies. This is an actual laboratory study with people with fear of spiders, some of whom were clinically phobic. And you can see from the data, the one in black this is how close can you approach to a live tarantula. So here at my lab, I owned a little pet tarantula named Chiquita, and people would walk into the room, and when they stopped, we would measure how close they got to the behavioral measure. And you can see that the people in the VR tactile group, before treatment, they stopped. They were, just by chance, they just happened to be the most aversive. So, but then you see they really were able to approach very closely. So this is a really good objective measure of treatment effectiveness, showing that tactile feedback increased the effectiveness of the exposure therapy. This is a graph. Most of the publications during the first half, let's say, or maybe a little more than that, are from my lab and my colleagues here at the University of Washington. Then in 2000, that's partly because we were the only ones who had a $90,000 VR system. And then that all changed in, with these new helmets coming out, the paradigm shift, the mass marketing, the billions of dollars being invested into VR. You see this just ginormous increase in number of publications on VR analgesia. And of course, the number of papers that I get to review is also skyrocketed. Here's one of the benefits of these new technologies is avatars. You saw the one I had where you had a position tracker, an electromagnetic position tracker on your taped to your finger, and one taped to the spider, and one on your head. And now it's all, of course, camera tracking, and that allows these incredible avatars with the hands. Just amazing. So this is Waltz of the Wizards. You can touch the water, and you can see it. You can even see your heartbeat in the water. It's amazing. It's just like real water. In fact, it's even more real if you physically touch real water at the same time. So this is, my mom is always rolling her eyes when they say, "What are you working on, Hunt?" And I say, "Oh, you put your hand in a bowl of water." And Mom's like, "Hunt, you need to work on your presentation. That doesn't sound very interesting." But it's really cool. You got to try it. You have to get the bowl in just the right place, and then when you physically touch the virtual water, when your cyber hand touches the virtual water, your real hand physically touches and what we showed is published data in Nature, one of the Nature sisters. Tactile feedback increased analgesic effectiveness, but we stumbled onto something very interesting. It increased avatar ownership. So the people, when you reach out and put your hand in a bowl of water and you can feel the water, you're like, "That's my hand," So and that has clinical potential. So one interesting tidbit I read when researching phantom limb pain is amputees who have a prosthesis that they feel the ownership of are less likely to develop phantom limb pain. So there are potential clinical value of being able to increase the ownership of the avatar. And this is a very cheap way to do it, just turn on the water faucet. So here's a guy from India that's actually an example of a burn patient doing physical therapy range of motion exercises, motivated by interacting with the virtual world. Pain reduced, so he's less hesitant to move around. And yes, he has a real water there too. So that's some burn researchers in India that I'm collaborating with. And then I have this study I did with Firouz Ibadi, Dr. Firouz Ibadi in orthopedics. So this was a very interesting patient. There's 2 papers published about him in National Geographic. One just shows his picture, and they found him so interesting they came back and did a follow-up interview with him in the July issue or whatever, at least online. This was a guy, a real buffed 50-year-old who was holding holding with one hand as he power washed moss off of his roof up there in Washington, and slipped and slid down the roof and landed on his feet and broke his pelvic bone, which of course can cause internal bleeding. And he crawled. Luckily, his iPhone still worked because he was out in, his neighbors were not nearby, and he was able to call, and they put him in a 3-day coma, 7 surgeries, and then now he's healed, and his doctor gives him, as kind of an opioid reduction technique, his doctor said, we can take these pins out in the operating room, and we can knock you out, or if you're willing, it doesn't take very long to unscrew the pins if you don't mind having them done in the outpatient clinic. And then you use much less opioids and you can just go home after the procedure. And a lot of these people have had so much opioids already, they're open to trying it. And now virtual reality, he had 1 pin removed with no VR and 1 pin removed with VR, and he showed much less pain and much more fun during Snow World, during the pin where they removed. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And that's the cover. And I also got, what do you call it, zinged by the secretary, because I was like, oh, we're on the cover. And she said, Dr. Hoffman, that is not you. You are not on the cover. So, okay, so I've recently, I know some of you, I've overheard some interesting conversations about using VR before, during, and after surgery. So one slide I forgot to put in there is we did a study in Baylor in Houston of a woman that was going in for gallbladder surgery. She was sitting in the pre-op room getting prepped and hearing, there's 10 other people in this big hospital getting prepped, and she's getting more and more nervous, worrying about what's going to, it's worrying about what's going to happen after the surgery, which is, the opposite of what you want with mindfulness, right? And we put her in snow. So we said, okay, what's your fear been for the last 10 minutes? And she said 8. Then we put her in Snow World. We said, okay, what was your fear during Snow World during the last 10 minutes? She said 0. So the nice thing is, if you take somebody who's having a panic attack, which is not that uncommon, it's actually natural to have some anxiety as you're being led in to get surgery. And I think around over 50% of people, at least in one study, reported feeling anxious in the pre-surgery room. So you can imagine, I don't know the details of the biology of it, but it seems to me that if you're having a panic attack, you may be having fight or flight hormones and adrenaline, for example, and it makes it harder for the anesthesiologist to put you under. And also, there's some data that you need more pain meds if you were anxious pre-surgery. So there's a lot of potential for using VR pre-surgery, and I've even recently seen some papers where they used it during surgery, and I'm like, well, how can that be? Because, well, with regional anesthesia, the person's still conscious. So you can use VR instead of just watching the procedure. So I'm helping teach a course with Kiara Mason, this big interdisciplinary expert on pediatric sedation outside of the operating room. She's very interested in VR, and I've been giving continuing medical education courses with her, and I'm going to help teach a course at Harvard later this year. Oh, so I thought I was done, but I have a lot more here. So here is Frank Keefe. Frank Keefe and I, in 2012, we said, some people were starting to say VR could be used for chronic pain. And yes, interestingly, chronic pain goes down if you put somebody in Snow World. But that doesn't mean that when they come out of the helmet, it's going to be better. It's hard to believe that it's going to help them in the long run. And what we said was, you can use VR for example, to increase movement, and then the increased movement can very well have long-term reduction in persistent pain, like chronic pain. So that's, and here's a homunculus. It turns out the hands are really highly represented by the brain. So those avatars that we just happen to be one of the first things that come out are really great for therapy for involving stimulating the motor and sensory cortex. And here's a little joke for you. And here's another example of the homunculus. I'm shocked how few people have ever heard of a homunculus. My mother never heard of a homunculus. Thank you very much.
Give everyone a minute. If anyone has a question, it's a very rare opportunity to ask a question of Dr. Hoffman. I'll have to say I've never heard a talk end ever on my mother has not heard of a homunculus. Pretty sure that's a first in human history. It has to be. Well, I don't know if anyone's ever ended a talk that way. Well, does anyone have any questions?
I have another example where at one conference, I saw something, it looked like disabled, trying to open the door but unable to, so I went over and opened the door, and there was a 6-foot-tall robot, and it said, "Excuse me, my bandwidth's a little low, would you mind opening the door?" And I had the shock that he was the speaker before me. And so when I got up there, I said, "Wait till my mom hears that I had to go after a robot."
You got one-upped by a robot. All right, well, I have plenty of questions, but I'm not gonna ask them right now. It seems like everyone else is okay for the moment. So another round of applause for Hunter Hoffman. Thank you for everything that you've done for the field and for enabling us to all be here today, the work that you've done.